There is a plant you are currently paying a chemical company to kill that contains more antioxidants than a $60 detox kit, not by weight, by biological potency. You spray it with glyphosate. You rip it from the cracks in your driveway. You curse its yellow face every spring like it has personally insulted your property value. And while you do this, somewhere across town, someone is paying pharmacy prices for a capsule containing a synthetic version of the exact compound growing free in your backyard. In 2023, researchers isolated a compound from this so-called weed that triggers cellular regeneration in liver tissue. Modern pharmaceutical labs are still trying to replicate that mechanism in a controlled environment. They have not succeeded. The lawn care industry spends $30 billion a year making sure you never let it bloom long enough to find out what it can do. If you have found this channel, you are no longer a passive consumer of what the market tells you is valuable. You are a student of what was deliberately forgotten. Subscribe now, because what you learn in the next 15 minutes will change the way you see every yellow flower for the rest of your life. The dandelion was not always an enemy. In the 10th century, Arabian physicians called it the chief of herbs. They prescribed it for conditions we would now classify as liver disease, kidney dysfunction, and chronic inflammation. It was not folk medicine, it was the medicine. The great Islamic medical encyclopedias devoted entire chapters to its preparation and administration. When the Mayflower crossed the Atlantic in 1620, the pilgrims did not accidentally bring dandelion seeds stuck to their boots. They packed them intentionally. This plant was their portable apothecary. It treated jaundice. It cleaned wounds. It kept scurvy at bay when citrus was a distant memory. They knew something we have been trained to forget. The scientific name tells you everything. Taraxacum officinale. That second word, officinale, is not decorative Latin. It is a classification. It means this plant was stored in the officina, the apothecary's back room, the place where only the essential medicines were kept. Every monastery garden in medieval Europe grew dandelions on purpose. Every ship's surgeon carried dried roots. Every village healer knew its name. For over 1,000 years, across every continent where it grew, this plant was not a weed. It was survival itself. Now consider what you have been told about nutrition. Carrots are good for your eyes. Spinach builds strong bones. Kale is a superfood worth paying premium prices for. These are the vegetables you were raised to respect. The dandelion makes them look ordinary. A single cup of raw dandelion greens contains more than 500% of your daily requirement of vitamin K. That is not a typo. It contains over 100% of your vitamin A requirement. That is 3 times more than the carrots you were told to eat as a child. It contains significant amounts of vitamin C, calcium, iron, potassium, and manganese. The nutrient density per calorie exceeds virtually every cultivated green you can buy in a grocery store. But the real secret is not in the vitamin panel. It is in a compound called taraxacin. Taraxacin is a bitter substance found in the milky white sap that bleeds from the stem when you snap it. That bitterness is not an accident, it is a signal. It is the plant telling you exactly what it does. When taraxacin hits your digestive system, it stimulates the production of bile in your liver. Bile is your body's natural detoxification fluid. It breaks down fats. It flushes metabolic waste. It processes the toxins you inhale and ingest every day. Bile production is the mechanism your $60 detox supplement is trying to mimic with synthetic compounds and marketing language. The dandelion does it naturally, immediately, and for free. A 2010 study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that dandelion root extract demonstrated significant anti-diabetic properties in laboratory models. It improved glucose tolerance, it reduced oxidative stress markers, it showed protective effects on pancreatic beta cells. The study was peer-reviewed, it was replicated, and then it was quietly ignored by every mainstream health publication with pharmaceutical advertising contracts to protect. So how did the chief of herbs become the enemy of the American lawn? The answer begins in 1945. World War II had just ended. Chemical companies that had manufactured weapons-grade herbicides for military operations suddenly found themselves with massive production facilities, trained workers, and no war to supply. A compound called 2,4-dichlorophenoxyacetic acid, originally developed to destroy enemy crops and vegetation, needed a new market. They found it in your front yard. The post-war suburban dream was sold as a complete package: a house, a car, a nuclear family, and a green carpet of uniform grass that signaled to your neighbors that you had achieved respectability. The dandelion, with its stubborn yellow head and refusal to conform to aesthetic uniformity, became the visible symbol of failure. Chemical companies did not just sell you herbicide, they sold you shame. They paid for magazine advertisements showing happy families on pristine lawns. They sponsored television programs that equated dandelions with neglect and moral failure. They created entire cultural narratives around lawn perfection. They invented a psychological problem and then sold you the chemical solution. The global herbicide market is now worth over $40 billion annually. Consider the structure of that economy. You are paying to poison a plant that heals your liver so that you can later purchase a synthetic pill that attempts to do what the plant already does for nothing. The same corporate structures profit on both ends of this transaction. They sell you the poison. They sell you the cure. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a documented business model operating in plain sight. The dandelion is not trying to ruin your lawn. It is trying to save your soil. The taproot of a mature dandelion can extend 15 feet into the earth. Most cultivated plants have root systems measured in inches. Your lawn grass barely penetrates the surface. The dandelion is a miner. It drills down past the depleted topsoil, where decades of industrial farming and chemical application have stripped the essential minerals. It reaches into the subsoil, where magnesium, calcium, iron, and trace elements still exist in abundance. It pulls those nutrients up through its vascular system and deposits them in its leaves and flowers. When the plant dies and decomposes, those deep earth minerals become available to the shallow-rooted grasses around it. The dandelion is not competition. It is a delivery service bringing fertility from depths your lawn cannot access. It also breaks up compacted soil. Every time you drive over your lawn, every time heavy rain beats the earth flat, every time foot traffic crushes the surface, the soil loses its ability to breathe. Roots cannot penetrate hardpan. Water cannot drain through compressed earth. The dandelion taproot punches through that compaction like a biological drill bit. It creates channels for air and water to penetrate. It opens pathways for earthworms and beneficial organisms. It is performing ecological repair work that would cost hundreds of dollars per acre if you hired a landscaping company to do it mechanically. You are poisoning your own free labor force. Identification matters. The dandelion has lookalikes, and not all of them share its properties. Cat's ear is the most common imposter. It grows in the same conditions and produces similar yellow flowers. Here is how you tell them apart with absolute certainty. A true dandelion has a hollow stem. Snap it at the base and look inside. If it is solid, it is not a dandelion. A true dandelion produces one flower per stalk. Always. If you see branching stems with multiple flowers on a single plant, you are looking at something else. A true dandelion. Bleeds white, that milky latex sap is your confirmation. Press your thumbnail into the stem. If white liquid appears, you have the real thing. Cat's ear has hairy leaves covered in fine fuzz. Dandelion leaves are smooth and hairless. Learn these differences before you harvest anything. When you do harvest, location is everything. Never pick dandelions from roadsides. Lead and cadmium from vehicle exhaust accumulate in roadside soil for years. The plants absorb these heavy metals into their tissues. Never pick from lawns that have been sprayed, even if the spraying happened months or seasons ago. Herbicide residues persist in soil and plant matter far longer than the labels suggest. Never pick from dog parks or areas with heavy animal traffic. Never harvest near industrial sites or agricultural runoff zones. The driveway rule is simple and absolute. If you would not eat food that fell on that ground, do not harvest plants that grew there. Find a clean meadow far from roads. Find an unsprayed backyard that has been chemical-free for years. Find a forest edge where the yellow flowers grow without interference from the modern chemical landscape. The root is where the medicine concentrates most intensely. Dig in the fall after the first frost, when the plant has pulled all its energy underground for winter storage. The root will be thicker, denser, and more potent than at any other time of year. Scrub the root clean under cold water. Slice it thin with a sharp knife. Roast it at low temperature, around 200 degrees, until it is dark brown and brittle enough to snap. Grind it into a fine powder using a coffee grinder or mortar and pestle. Brew it like coffee. What you are drinking is a liver tonic that European herbalists prescribed for centuries before synthetic pharmaceuticals dominated the medical marketplace. The leaves are food. Harvest them young in early spring before the flowers appear. This is when the bitterness is mild enough for raw consumption in salads. The French never stopped eating them. In Parisian markets today, you can still buy cultivated dandelion greens sold under the name pissenlit for premium prices, while Americans spray the identical wild plant with carcinogenic chemicals. The flowers are the overlooked treasure. They contain one of the highest natural concentrations of lecithin, a phospholipid essential for brain cell membrane integrity and cognitive function. Steep them in raw honey to make a healing syrup. Fry them in light batter for a delicate spring treat. Ferment them into a pale golden wine that medieval households made every year. Every part of this plant is usable. Every part has a documented function. Nothing is waste, nothing is accident. You have been taught to see abundance as a threat. You have been trained to view free medicine as an invasive pest. A yard full of dandelions is not a failure of lawn maintenance. It is a pharmacy growing without permission. It is a grocery store restocking itself. Every spring, it is a soil restoration crew working without payment. The next time you see that yellow flower pushing through a crack in the sidewalk, do not reach for the spray bottle. Reach for a shovel. Dig it up roots and all. Wash it carefully. Dry it properly. Store it for the winter months when nothing else grows. You have just harvested medicine that your great-grandparents considered essential for survival. You have reclaimed knowledge that a $40 billion industry hoped you would never rediscover. Once you see this pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand what grows free beneath your feet, you stop being a customer. You become something older, something the market cannot control. We open the doors that profit closed. We remember what commerce made us forget. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who still poisons their yard. Because the next plant we uncover might be growing outside your window right now, waiting for you to finally see it for what it truly is,